extremely lacked. As you guys know, the Chief Justice never came to any of our Senate meetings, including tonight, after being told that the Senate was disappointed in his role as court justice. So, did you want to do a point here?
No, we'll start with Chief Justice.
Okay, so I'll answer any questions.
If the chair would permit, may I ask a question of the Chief Justice candidate? May I?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you plan on attending SGA meetings during the next calendar year?
I think it's essential for all three branches to participate in things together, and the non-attendance shows that that's not happening. The non-attendance is why we have issues such as this.
And if I could just say, Brandon has attended almost every single staff or Senate meeting, even though he wasn't required to this year.
Can I ask a question over here as well?
Yes, sir.
So after everything happened with canceling being able to vote this year, and we're wanting to revise some of the Constitution and the election procedures, would you be willing to help with that next year?
My goals and this goals have been shared with Sana and Curtis is this summer with the justices to amend the Constitution. There's language in there that it doesn't make sense. And that starts there and it goes straight into the election rules. There's a reasons we have a lot of issues this year and they need to be resolved in August, not waiting until later on in the year. The language in there is off and needs to be fixed.
Well, tell me whatever for you guys.
Mike, you're next.
I'd like to yield the floor to Skylar.
I'd like to question Chief Justice candidate Brendan McReynolds. Hey, Brendan. I'm a senator-elect for next year. I've been in staff a long time. I've been involved in elections. And every election year, it seems like people take advantage of the court's non-transparent rules. It's the cloudy nature of its judgments, which don't seem to, for me, and I've studied their judgments, don't seem to follow from any logical reasoning. I had, when I was putting out my flyers, for instance, someone come right up next to me and put their flyers right next to mine to purposely block me off. I feel like a lot of the, having run campaigns, that a lot of the things that the court doesn't make clear, people use during the elections to win cheap votes. For instance, I was on the opposite slate, but Curtis's slate, I won because the people who elected, when the people spoke, their votes were taken away and I was elected. So that happened because the slate formation, which everyone knows who's ever run a campaign, you can't win unless you're on a slate. Someone from the slate or whatever clicked on the provinces like the court, for some reason, decided to dock all those votes. How will you make for all those reasons, will you make an honest attempt to make the court more transparent? I haven't seen any court rulings or, precedents put up online. There's no way to predict the actions of the court. It has the power to take away the people's decision. What will you do to address those issues?
It starts with the rewording of the Constitution, because if you read as is now, there are some language in there that states what the court is supposed to put in online and release documents to the student body. That needs to be reworded. I think there needs to be added to that, because I do believe those opinions should be more readily available and given to the student body and to members of the SGA as a whole. And that starts in August, because again, repeating on the further question, and then moving into the election rules and wording of that sort. I'm not saying that we need thousands of court cases. I really want none. But in the end, the rules are as stated, and they need to be clearly stated. I'm not saying we need to pity over the poster on the board or the things of that nature, but we do need to hold a honest and fair election in which all students are represented and a fair chance at it, and that no student is favored. And on that note, too, having a court that is impartial to either party. In the past, I've been impartial, I've been independence of the court seems to have been an issue, and that will not be an issue. The Constitution clearly states that if anyone on the court has a party affiliation with anyone's said case, they should remove themselves from that case, and someone else will be appointed in their place. Therefore, we will have that open and honest. I'm just wanting to clearly state that clarity will be there, and that will be clear for
and I've watched enough C-SPAN to know that you don't have to answer this question, but will you penalize if a case came before you where the action of one slate member or one unknown person did something to jeopardize the entire slate? Would you be willing to dock the entire slate if that one person could be identified?
That is something.
Actually, I'm sorry. As Chief Justice, Brandon will not be able to make such decisions.
Yeah, I'm not a Senate member.
Okay.
That's not my job. That would not be my job title. So that would be a good question for an associate justice. But again, I advise to look at those on a case-by-case basis and not make an overall statement.
Who's your next then, Paul?
One of the responsibilities, so this is for Brandon again, one of the responsibilities given to the court this past year was to increase voter turnout. If that was given to you again, what would you do for that?
First of all, the court was very last minute in that this year. Again, I think that in anything that you do, you must prepare for these things early and prepare them as early as possible. That is working with the initiatives in the other branches, setting goals, and then actually actively participating in it. It was sad when we looked at the court and put those down for not active participants in that. And that's saying one thing and acting in another manner, in my opinion. All student voices should be heard, and that passion for the student voice and student voice to be heard drives me to give new students I can vote for whoever it is. And to do that in a way that is fair, open, and is communicated to all students.
Paul?
What year are you in school?
I'm a sophomore.
Would you be interested? Are you planning on continuing on court in the future? What are your future?
My aspirations of now is to graduate in my undergrad in the winter of 2012, and then entering into a master's program in education for my master's in teaching. So then I'll be around for about another year. So,
And you would be interested in sticking around as well?
yes, I would certainly hold on to the position.
Kyle?
What are you looking
one of the things, I have some friends that are on court and have been on court. One of the things that I've noticed with conversations through them is that while the Senate has regular meetings, the executive branch has regular meetings, the court, that branch seems to be the only branch, and even SAB does, the court seems to be the only branch that doesn't have regular meetings. And while there aren't necessarily pressing issues throughout the entire year that a court would necessarily have to have a meeting twice a month like a Senate does, that disconnect has really created a lot of issues. And a lot of what happened this past year, lack of communication, not necessarily knowledge of what's going on, even at the court cases, not every court member even being present, has created a lot of the issues that we saw over last year, and I feel is going to create more issues in the future. So what, as Chief Justice, are you going to do to create a greater stability and a more feeling of cohesion within the court, as opposed to, say, a conversation that I've had with multiple people saying the same thing, that the court meets, the court does two things: it establishes the election rules, doesn't meet anymore until they need to address the election rules in the campaign. So what are you going to do to kind of create a better cohesion within the court?
It just starts plainly with just leadership, and with the lack of leadership that I've seen from the court this year. There must be that body, there must be that meeting, there must be that constant discussion, because though the court is the overall seer of election rules, they also do oversee a lot of they oversee the body and how this body operates, its constitution. They're in charge of the operation and creation of new artists of constitutions. There is a constant year-over-year around tasks for the court. It is not a process that only lasts during election season. It's a process that if this body, as an SGA, is going to excel and be where it wants to be, and all the potential that it has, the Supreme Court must operate in full capacity as the rest of the branches do. And for that, I mean, it does include regular scheduled meetings, it does open and honest communication, it does include all of that, and constantly having that open communication. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I have one quick follow-up question too. A lot of other issues have stemmed, and you can interpret from my question whether it's no problem. Will you plan after you and the rest of the court get together and craft the new election rules? Do you plan to stand in front of the Senate body and read the election rules word for word and explain any questions or controversies or comments that anyone may have on any part of it before the Senate passes them, as opposed to having them brought up, handed out in advance, and then brought up quickly, scan through them, and say, all right, let's pass it? Do you plan on doing that?
Yes, I mean, I believe that everything should be very front-loaded in how we fine-tooth looking through that document. It is not something that we come to 3 weeks after the election and there is language that is so unclear that we sit here and we argue for hours about what students, what student voice should count or shouldn't count. That's not what we should do. Every student vote should count. It should be done in a way that is open and in which way every senator should walk out of here tonight of approving the election rules confident that their constituent vote will be heard.
Mike, you're next, but we're not actually currently in a motion, so I've got someone make a motion to just approve Chief Justice, to approve Brandon McReynolds as Chief Justice.
I would like to make a motion to approve the appointments.
Is there a second? Okay. Any
Parliamentary
discussion?
inquiry, who are we currently moving? He said the appointments, so that's all of them.
We're as Chief Justice.
Just for Brandon McGrath.
Okay.
All right. Mike.
Never mind.
Paul. Okay, we're voting to vote. All in favor of moving to the question, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we're voting on Brandon McReynolds as the next Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Brandon McReynolds is approved. Can I have a motion on the floor to approve the two remaining justices, which are Brad Hall and Doug Lucio?
Seconded.
Okay. We'll open the floor to discussion. Paul.
I'd like to give an opportunity for Doug to answer all the questions that we just asked. What year you are, what are your feelings about election rules, reason of meetings, etc. So just,
Paul, do you mind if I give a brief introduction?
Yeah,
Or if
sorry.
the reasons why I did it? Brad Hall used to be in Student Government Association. He was an assistant to the executive vice president. And from what I understand, institutional knowledge of SGA is important for and Brad Hall expressed interest in this position early in the fall, and luckily there was a position open. So after meeting with him several times and speaking with him, I think that may be a great candidate. I know that his experience in the law school and his interest in SGA is making him a great candidate. And with Doug, he has had experience in the debate team. I'll let him talk to you a little bit more about himself, but we actually tried to approve Doug closer to the election period, but his approval was pulled out because of the time sensitivity for the election. So,
Doug, you have the floor to answer Paul's question.
What year are you in school? What are your long-term plans? How do you feel about election rules? Do you want to come to meetings?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
What can we talk about?
Well, first, I'm a freshman here. My plans are varying a little bit to decide whether or not I want to stay for 4 or 5 years. It depends if I get in this study abroad program that I want. Yeah. This is my 3rd Senate meeting that I've watched, and the last 2 that I went to, well, the first one was when the first idea of the